Welcome to the Spirits, Angels, and Guides Oh My podcast.
Where the supernatural gets real, baby.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I am Nancy Christine Brady.
I'm Tara Diana.
And boy, do we have a good topic for you today. You know, Tara, this is something we get asked all the time. And it's all about mediums and how we grieve. Do we grieve different? Do we grieve the same? It must be okay because we can see dead people and talk to them.
That's always the number one thing. It's got to be easier for you guys.
Right?
It's got to be easier because you know where they are. You can tap into them. That's an interesting thing right there. Can we always tap into them? I don't know. Do they come when our beck and call? Do we have the 411 to spirit, Nancy?
You know, it was really interesting. When I lost my father, I had a certain individual ask me, you're grieving and you're grieving deeply. Should I check that he's made it to the other side and he's not stuck in purgatory and I need to help him pass along?
Yeah, I know. I think sometimes people, I don't think they truly understand how it works with spirit. You know, when you say you're a medium and you connect to spirits on the other side, I feel people think it's just like a vision right there. There is, your dad sitting right in front of you and you're having this conversation. And that when you're thinking of him, he's going to come through and connect with you. And, there's so many nuances to mediums and we all work differently in how we receive. So I can't speak for anyone but myself. But for me, my loved ones, honestly, my loved ones, my grandparents, my great aunts, I had the blessing of like having a very large, like my family was lit, with the exception of my poor mama. But most of my family, my grandparents, my great aunts, etc., lived to be like almost 100. And my great grandmother lived to be 101. So, there's longevity on both sides of the family. But I don't have them come through. Periodically, I had, a message. Like, I am positive Auntie Peggy almost drove me right off Patillo Bridge or not Patillo, Portman, when she passed away. All of a sudden, my windows, I was driving across the bridge all by myself in my Grand Cherokee. Windows were going up and down and lights were turning on and off. And I was like, what the fluff is going on here? It freaked me right out. I had to get off and I was positive that was Auntie Peggy for another reason. But then I've had people cross over, like one of my dearest friends, and she was my mom's age, but she was my ex boyfriend's mom, but very close to her, very, very close. And she's never come through. I've never felt her. No one's ever brought her through. Some people have tried to bring her through, but it definitely was not her. But I'd never felt her. And it's interesting because I don't know about you, Nan, but my grieving process is very different than everyone else's. I shed like a couple of tears here, a couple of tears there when my mom passed recently. I didn't break down and cry when any of my grandparents passed or Auntie Peggy. I felt sad and I felt but I don't cry. Now, when Ryan died, obviously, I cried. But for these other family members and things, I didn't cry. And it's such a weird thing because Princess Diana passed away. Now, this is long before I was doing mediumship. I was already a medium, but not doing mediumship. And I bawled like it was the last thing that, I was ever going to have joy again.
I did too. I remember the night she passed away, where I was, how I heard it.
Me too.
Yeah, broke right down, bawled my face off. It was very interesting.
Yeah, but when my family just doesn't come through. Like and they don't come through to other mediums. It's very rare. And here's the problem with me though, is that I'm a little jaded in the whole getting readings from other people and stuff like that. I tend not to go for readings. I tend to go more for energy work. And I'm jaded in the energy work. I have like 3 practitioners that I go to. And most of that is because I just don't want someone to bring someone through and say, "I have your mother here," and me be like, "Nope, you don't." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why we did what we did. Remember with Ryan, my son. Remember, Nan? We said to everyone, do not bring Tara messages. Do not bring Tara messages because she doesn't want to have to unfriend you when it's not him.
Well, and at the time, you know, and this is no disrespect to your students because you mentor a lot of people. I really feel all the best intentions were coming forward to say, like, look what I can do for my teacher. Let me bring Ryan through. But that was such a different type of grieving and such a deep grief. And you certainly didn't want it to be like, this isn't the groundwork where you test your skills. This isn't the, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, when we're talking about how do mediums grieve, like how do we do that? It's so individual. It's so individual. It's the same that how do we read for other people? How do we bring spirits through for other people? We are also unique in how we do it. But I remember saying to myself when I first found out about Ryan that I had to do it from a human space. I had to do it from my humanness. And you talked about questions that people ask you. The number one question is, I'm so sorry. I heard about your son. That's not a question. That's a statement. But do you feel him? Does he give you signs? And that doesn't bother me that they ask that. But do you know what they're waiting for? Is they're waiting for me to tell them I have a conversation with him. They're waiting for them to help, me to say, I see him and I know. I feel right, but not even the same way I feel other spirits when I'm reading for someone else. I'll get a fluttering, but I get lots of very specific signs,
Yeah.
which I think most people would miss.
Yes. And I feel too, it's a deeper and different level because of the emotional involvement. Because you're and me, we all function. Well, a lot of us tend to function from our human when we're grieving, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
which I think is good.
I do too. I mean, we are all a soul having a human experience, and so I've been with you when we've seen signs, and it's been, oh, there's Rye Guy. Okay, awesome. These are great signs, but I have to agree with you. I say same with me. Like when I'm grieving, it's different, and it's also different based on the person, if that makes sense. Um, so like you said earlier, my grandmother died at the age of 101. And
Oh,
she was definitely ready to go. And
yeah.
it was one of those things like I shed maybe 2 or 3 tears and then I celebrated her because she had wanted to go for so long. She'd actually been alive longer without her husband than she had been married to him, because my grandmother
Oh,
died of
yeah,
grief.
yeah.
Um, so it was very interesting because every time I'd visit her, she's like, "I want to go. I want to be with my partner." So when she finally did go home, it was like, "Okay, good on ya. Way to go, grandma," right?
Yeah.
Ryan's circumstance and situation is a way different type of grief than, say, losing my father or suddenly losing my brother. Like, each of those had different types of grieving stages based on even where I was in my human. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure it does. I think that the uniqueness of it all. So when someone comes to me and they're coming for mediumship and solely mediumship, and sometimes I'll know immediately. Do you know what I mean? When someone comes into a space and they're like, okay, they sit down and I can read them and I'll be like, I'll hear this little voice, it's Tony, I'm sure. And he says, "Mm, don't go into anything about the future. Don't go, we're not fortune tellers anyway, but don't go into anything about that. We're about to pick up on who they need, who they want in their space." And so that brings me to that 411 thing, right? When I say that, I say to everyone, I do not, when people try to vet me, that always makes me laugh. I'm like, come to the table with no expectation. Oh, do you do this? Do you do that? And they'll say to me, how do you find the person? Like, I want this specific person. And I'll say, I don't have the 411 to spirit. The reason I say that, Nan, it's not that I can't call spirits through. You can call spirits through. You do it all the time too. It's more along the lines of, do they have a message for you? And I think that's really important if you're coming to see someone as a medium, and someone has just passed recently, and it's someone, I'm going to go with the more recent than I have a lot of people that come for, partners that have passed a long time ago, kids that have passed a long time ago. Excuse me, but I'm talking more along the lines of someone that, someone's just crossed over, and that someone isn't coming through. They're just not coming through. So I can bring in another person who starts the process. And there's so many different reasons. And what I mean, another person, another spirit is what I mean, for clarity, everyone. I can bring in another spirit. Maybe it's a grandmother, or maybe it's the father. And that spirit comes in and it starts the process, and it opens up a portal for this other individual that hasn't been gone as long or doesn't know what they're doing over there. Because there are times that spirits come through and they're like, hey, and they have to come into the space and figure out what they're doing here. Sometimes they'll come in flash and be like, tell her I'm good, and then they be gone. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And adding to that, one of the things I always say to people, especially for recently deceased people, when they come for a reading and we connect, right? So the loved one that they want to connect with comes in, gives some messages, and then they want a reading next month. And it's like, no, it's too soon. Like, it's just like when you used to call your Auntie Judy every month. Well, if there's nothing to talk about, you're not going to talk about it. If you covered it all in the telephone conversation before, you know what I mean?
yeah. And they're, like if they really want to come, and you've said to them, hey, you can come. Because this is how I do it. I'm like, you can come, but you were only here a little while ago. Do you feel like they'll have another message for you? Is that why you want to connect with them? And then I gauge what they say to me. So if they say, no, I just want to feel them. I just want you to bring them through
Yeah.
and let me feel them. Who am I to say no?
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's a
But
great way to do it.
yeah, you know what? And then come through and do that. But I truly believe that every time a spirit comes through, every single time a spirit connects with me, they have something they want to give. And I contradicted myself a little while ago, and I was like, spirits always have a message, and it's never just, hey, how are you? And after I said that, I was like, wait a minute. It can be that simple. I tend not to bring those simplistic messages through, but it can be that simple. And I just gave that. I just said, do you just need to feel them? That was for the human. That wasn't about the spirit.
Exactly.
When they say, I just want to know they're okay and they're whatever, that spirit comes through with purpose. Spirits come through with purpose. And I believe in that message more. And this is where people are going to be like coming at me with daggers and all sorts of things. But I believe that more than I believe in sitting down and giving a 30-minute reading of evidential mediumship. I'm an evidential medium. You're an evidential medium. I'm not
Yeah.
discrediting that. Let's not get it twisted. I am literally saying that the message that the spirit brings through for me as the practitioner, as the conduit, as the message bearer means far more than the fact. And I use the same stuff all the time, that Granny wore pink panties and smoked a pack of cigarettes a day, and she played cards. And when she was 10, she, played on the train tracks. And when she was 20, she had a first base. Like, all those things are relevant. But in my view, when you bring 3 pieces of evidence through for the person, especially if someone is grieving hard,
Yes. Yeah.
right? If you can bring 3 good pieces of evidence through, move on to the message, because ultimately that's what they're there for.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And as someone who has lost people, it wasn't until I lost Ryan that I could understand people's true grieving. Like this deep
Yeah.
guttural grieving, because I wasn't doing that with my aunts, and my mom passed after Ryan, but and I'm still not doing that with my mom, and I loved her. God, did I love that woman, but I still am not, grieving that way, that guttural, like my sister is grieving that way. I'm not, and it wasn't. So when people would come to me, I mean, there are certain things that were triggers for me. Kids were always a trigger for me. When someone comes in and I start bringing in, and I always go back to that woman that came in with her, and she had 3 sons, and 2 of her sons passed away, and that was big for me. That was hard to do because I had little kids, right?
Yeah.
And the thought of losing a child was horrendous.
Yeah.
So that was really, really hard. The other thing, Nan, if you don't mind my sweet little muffin, I'm going to bring this up, is that somehow you become part of this club that you don't want to be a part of. So all
Okay.
sorts of people that have lost a child, or specifically a son, and they want to help you, and they want to give you some of their advice, but they're not necessarily out of their own space. Some are angry still. Some are like overwhelmingly sad still about it, and you never get over it for sure. But that's a group that I really uh, don't want to be in, even though I'm a part of it. And I think sometimes people see me as like, oh, here's a medium. She connects to spirit. She's lost her son. I've lost my son. No one's ever asked me to bring their son through or their daughter through, knowing my grieving process, like just walked up to me. But I get a lot of that. Oh, we're now in the same club. And they're not wrong, but it's not a club I necessarily want to participate in. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, what happens is a lot of people look for an emotional connection to us before we do the readings. And so, oh, she's grieving the same way I am because she's lost a son and I've lost a son. So she's not just going to be sympathetic, she's going to be empathetic to what I'm
Oh,
on.
right. We should talk about the difference between sympathetic and empathetic.
Well, let's do it right now.
You start. I just meant maybe we should put something somewhere. When our followers come and follow, we should put
Well,
something there.
empathy is where you have that sort of endearment. You go, oh, it's unfortunate you're going through that, and you have these feelings to support the person. Whereas empathy is where you've actually gone through what they're going through, so you feel it at a different level, a deeper connection.
Okay, so the reason I asked you to do that is because sympathy for me, like I sympathize with you. It feels less invested, obviously, right? It feels like a less invested kind of space. And here's the thing, as a medium, I am more sympathetic when I do my readings. That is the deepest I will go with someone because I can't carry, right? I can't carry.
Right.
And
And nor is it our responsibility to carry that level of emotion. That's why we all cleanse after readings and send their energy back to them and pull ours back in, right?
exactly. So for me, even having gone through all of this, I still am able to have that protection where I can stay sympathetic in the reading, even though we're connected, even though the individual may see me as a partner in this loss. They've lost their child, I've lost my child, and they see this, that I'm going to be full of empathy, and there's always empathy. We're always we're spiritual beings, right? You and I, and people that do the work. Everyone's a psychic, everyone's a medium, but those of us that do the work, we tend to have more empathy. It's like this little crazy thing that comes up, and we have this jar that's just full of empathy, but we know how to control that empathy. That's what makes a good medium in my books.
Yeah. And, it's good that you say that because I do find, as people get into, and this isn't discrediting young mediums, but I find a lot of people around the same age as you and I, where they kind of have these sudden epiphanies of, I'm a medium. It's because they've got the life history, the life experience in order to have that empathy for other people when they're doing those readings, right? So
Yeah.
been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I can completely empathize with you where you've been. But our book of experience is so much more vast than, say, a 12-year-old who's a medium who maybe could bring through grandma, but can't quite understand all of the human parts of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that brings us to back to, do we grieve differently than the average Joe just because we are intuitives or psychics or mediums or whatever you want to call us? And the answer to that is I truly believe that we grieve more intentionally, right?
That's a
So,
great way to put it. Yeah.
yeah. So that the whole place of me standing in a hotel parking lot getting the news, right? I set the intention right there. Well, this is what I said. And some of you will have heard this before. Ryan, I'm not going to eat chocolate. And I'm going to do this for my humanness. I am going to grieve from my humanness. I'm going to handle this for my humanness. I did that within 3 minutes
Yeah.
of me finding out. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I didn't my dog bit someone in the middle of all this, and I set that intention, right? I set that intention that I have to do this for my humanness. If I go to spirit, if I go etheric with this, I'm not gonna come back. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna come back. Everything will become about Ryan. Now, don't get me wrong, babies. Everything is about Ryan still. You think about him all the time. You bring him up. There's always a scenario. Sometimes I feel bad for some of his friends. If I go out with my Ryan's very, very good lacrosse buddy Caleb, and we go out and have something to eat before he goes back to school. He goes to school in the US. Um, I relate to Caleb through Ryan. So I'm constantly like, "Oh, do you remember when Ryan did this? Or do you remember Ryan did that?" Which can be hard on someone, but it's my connection. And they will handle it with grace. But if I just said, "Okay, I'm just gonna go up to spirit because that's where I know he is," I may as well cross over to spirit. Because living there while you're down here disassociates you from everything else that's going on down here. And I have an amazing husband. I have you. I have, Lynn and Mel and Jenny and all these beautiful Sherry, all these beautiful people in my life that I still want to be with.
Yeah.
No matter how much I'd like to move up and make sure he's okay. And one of the things I said to my mom, I had a really hard time thinking of what to say to my mom, Nan, when she crossed. I told her I loved her turkey dinner.
Oh,
I said, "I can't think of anything profound to say, Mom, but I loved your turkey dinner, your stuffing, your potatoes, your gravy." I listed it all. Well, my mom or my sister or my dad and my daughter were all standing there watching me. But I did say to her, "Go find my baby. Go make sure he's okay.
yeah.
Ask him if he likes what we're doing, all the court stuff. If he's, I could ask Ryan that, and I'm sure I could feel it. I don't want to ask Ryan that. I want to get the number 10 flashed at me or the bear. That was a creepy thing. But those are the things I want, Nan. I don't want to go etheric. I don't want to spend all my time because do you know how easy it would be to simply just stay there,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's a lot, and I think that, again, it comes down to, we all do it very differently, but if I was going to say to anyone, does a medium grieve differently than the average individual? The answer to that is everyone is different, and we all do it differently.
Yeah.
We all do it differently.
And just respect the process. Like if it takes you 2 moments, great. If it takes you 20 years, that's fine too. Everybody is going to grieve differently, and you have to give yourself some grace in the process of it. And, you often I'm assuming you're often the same as me where you have people come to you and they're like, "I just wanna feel them one more time. I just wanna hug them or see them or smell them, and why am I not getting signs? Why are they not coming to me in my dreams?" And the point is you need to be in your human. You need to be working through this. You need to be going through the grief and experiencing that so that you can come out on the other side. And I know that people don't want to hear that when they're grieving. But again, it returns to us being in the human, having that human experience.
And people that are deeply grieving, right? Really sitting in that space, they tend to miss the signs anyway,
Yes.
right? They don't realize that they don't always remember what they dream. And the dream state is the best state to have spirit come through because your conscious is to the wayside. So you can have those conversations. And so how many times has spirit come through and been like, I've been talking to them. They ain't listening in the dreams, right? All the time. Or, the sign, they're looking for these amazing, like, not catastrophic, excuse me, like,
Magnificent.
yes, kind of signs. The signs that, like, you, without a doubt, but that's not how this all works. Now, I get 10s all the time. That's Ryan's number in lacrosse. All the time. That 10 means something. It means that he's around. It means that he's there. Now, someone can write that off and be like, that's just coincidence. Now you're just noticing it more than you did before. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. It is literally a sign. And it always happens when I feel I need something. And I don't call out and say, Ryan, show me that you're up there. Show me that you're here with me. I don't do that. I just will be like, I hate that you're not here. Right? And then there is a wandering, man walking down the street who suddenly walks past my car open window and starts singing in some different language. And so I look in my rearview mirror and what's on the back of his shirt? The number 10.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that, we are human. We are spirits just having a human experience, everyone. But those of us that do this work, that feel that we have an easier connection. That's the way I'm going to say it. Everyone's a psychic. Everyone's a medium. Some of us just accept it and can do that work well because we trust the process. We trust that we can do this. We trust we are meant to do this. And so some of us just do this with a little more ease is the best way to say it, but no less human.
That is a very good way to say it.
Yeah. So if you're going to go and get a reading, friends, with someone, go with no expectation. Be open to whoever comes through. And just know that there's always a message for you. And if you're grieving hard, that spirit is around you. The one you're grieving knows you're grieving hard. And you may not feel them, you may not see them, you may not hear them, but they will be there. This is what Nan and I have learned over many, many years. They know, and they will always give you something.
100%. And we always get what we need, not what we want.
Exactly. So guys, if you enjoyed this, if you felt that our conversation resonated with you in some way, we invite you to come and chill with us, to go a little bit deeper, to come be a part of our community.
So we have some good, exciting news coming, and I know I've been dropping that for a little bit, but we are working on a Patreon. So that is coming. I want you guys to check in the links if you're following us audibly, I guess, on the podcast.
Audibly?
Check the descriptions. If you're following us on YouTube, check the descriptions because that's where you're going to get those links to all of the freebies and then the links to Patreon once it's up. Woo!
Woo! And remember, our space is one of support. It's sacred. It is a place where you are safe to develop, to grow, to ask your questions. So we can't wait to see you there, guys.
Absolutely. Check out the links, guys, and join our circle. Let's continue this journey together.
Yay! See you next week, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the wonderfully weird and metaphysical.
If you loved what you heard, don't forget to follow us for more insights and behind the scenes fun.